if you're like me and you come from an international family or even a bilingual family like I do, my wife is from Norway and we're currently living in Norway. You may consider writing a bilingual children's book if you're an author. I'm sitting here now with Tanya Bayrami, who is just finishing up writing her first book, I believe, called, I'm going to call it Golden Chick. I know it has another name and we'll talk about that later. But it is a bilingual book. Tanya, thanks for joining me on the Coffee and Kidlit Show. This is a little special episode. Normally we're on Tuesdays, and of course today is not Tuesday, but I really wanted to have Tanya on the show, and my schedule is booked for the next couple of months. So it's really great to have you on, Tanya.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Tell me a little bit about your background, and just tell me as much as you want.
So I was born in Iran during the Iran-Iraq War. We fled Iran a couple years after I was born. Did a little bit of moving around. We were in the UK briefly and Turkey, and then finally settled in Canada. And so I had a pretty normal upbringing, I think, at least for what I thought. And then in high school, I was that person who thought they knew what they wanted to do with their life. Everything in my life was going down the criminology path. I think too much of CSI type shows I watched. I was like, I'm going to be a forensic pathologist, and I was going to be a detective, and then a criminal lawyer, and policing was kind of where my goal was. And in university, I was studying criminology. I was working with a lawyer who was really active in the medical marijuana movement in Canada before things became legal. And I was an auxiliary sergeant with the Toronto Police. And then one day, my cousin, who was living in Australia, invited me to come visit her. I took a leave of absence from the Toronto Police, and that was a whole new chapter in my life. I decided that this is crazy. I just need to travel. I need to see the world. And that's where my passion was. And so I spent the next few years, I was bartending in Toronto in the summers. I would save up every penny and then take off in the winters. And I became kind of a snowbird at a really young age. And I spent a season in Miami and then another season in Costa Rica and Southeast Asia and wherever I could go where it was warm. And then I happened to be living in Costa Rica at the time. A friend of mine told me about this scuba diving sailboat in the Bahamas. And for like $1,000, you can go diving, eat amazing food and drinks, and like all inclusive for a whole week. So we went, and I luckily met my future husband on that boat. He was running the boat as the boat captain. And he quit his job. We traveled together for a little bit. And then he's like, how would you like to be a yacht chef? And I was like, that sounds so good. I could travel and make money at the same time. That seems like an amazing deal. Yeah, I didn't realize it was going to be 12 to 16 hours a day working. So we had a fun little, almost a decade of doing that. And then, and I realized how much I always loved food, but I didn't realize how much I loved cooking. And it was a really fun few years. I got to have that creative outlet that I think I was kind of missing a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then we decided to settle down in St. Pete, Florida, which is this really cute little town that's kind of got like big city amenities, but small town living. We could ride our bike to the farmer's market and to downtown, the beach. It was good. And we had Zoe, my daughter, who's now just over 4. And so everything kind of switched over, and now my focus was on raising a kid and making food that was good for a toddler.
Right.
And then I got
Is that much different from cruise food, though?
I would say big time, yeah. We went from like truffle oil infused foie gras type of crazy, really cool presentations to like, all right, I'm just giving you wholesome food. But she had a pretty good palate, you know. She loved, when she was a kid, she loved like spicy Thai flavors. And now she's kind of gone away from that, but she still loves garlic and strong things like that. Yeah. And yeah, I was saying to my husband the other day, I'm like, Zoe didn't really have a lot of toys. I feel like when she was so little, that books were her toys, you know, like, and I had so much free time. So I would just read to her all day. It was just our thing. And her passion for books has just escalated. Like she is a reader. The other day we were at a restaurant meeting some friends and family, and she had her book. She was just sitting there with this chapter book. My 4-year-old reads a chapter book.
Yeah.
So
we were talking about that briefly before we went live, that I was really impressed by the video that you have on your Kickstarter about the way Zoe, or, you know, just how well she's reading at her age. It's amazing. And to kind of attribute that to reading to her as she was small. That's something that I talked to another author about a couple of weeks ago, and how the importance of reading to your kids is. So that's really cool.
So true. And like the Montessori way of learning has been like phonetics. So she really, you know, the stages she went through, she first learned to like trace her letters, and then it would be the sound of the letter. She never learned the name of the letter. It was never like the letter S, it's the sound S. So I think that that really helped, being able to introduce phonetics.
Yeah, that's really great. So you've written this book, and I'm calling it Golden Chick. I know that's the English name for it. It's a bilingual book. Can you tell us more about Golden Chick and the history behind the story? And just tell us about that story.
Yeah, so Golden Chick, which in Persian we call Joojé Talâee, is, I think, probably from what I've been speaking to other Persian families about, probably the most common nursery rhyme, like probably like Mary Had a Little Lamb or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I think it has such a positive message that people just really are sucked into it. Whereas some, you know, nursery rhymes or stories, I don't know, I just lack that positive message. And it's really simple, and it just has a really beautiful, like, sing-soundy vibe to it. It's fun to read. It's fun to sing. And so from a really young age, my parents would sing this song to Zoe, and it was, and so Juju means like little chickie. And so one of Zoe's nicknames as a kid was Juju. So we would just call her Juju. And I have awesome videos of my mom reading Joojé Talâee to her. And so that's kind of why we chose that. And it just has a beautiful message of, really like just being aware of like a discomfort maybe, and knowing that you can like overcome that discomfort, and how to like push through and knock down walls, barriers. Like, I think I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, it's a really simple story, but there's so many underlying messages that you can really read into it. And I think that about a lot of our storybooks is like, it kind of gives us the opportunity to start that conversation with our kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into that a little bit more with just the underlying message to this story. But you know, it seems like such a simple story. One thing I noticed, and I have to bring it up, is let me share the screen again. As did the hero named Rostam. Now, I got to be honest, I have no idea who that is. Can you explain who Rostam is? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, no, you're pronouncing it really well.
Okay.
So it's funny that when we first translated this, I translated it to Hercules. And I thought that was a more accessible way, because Rostam is kind of like the Persian Hercules.
Okay.
He's like a legendary hero in Persian mythology. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I don't know if he's a real person. No, I think he's really just in stories. And so I just kind of kept that and thought, oh, this is a conversation starter. And so that was actually my brother's suggestion, was not changing it to Hercules and keeping it true to... Because, you know, initially we translated it word for word. The story was translated, and it obviously, from anyone who knows, translations word for word do not flow very well. And so we did a few tweaking, and then kind of went a little bit away from the exact wording, but really still keeping true to the message of the story.
So let's talk a little bit about that message, because it is well, the story itself is about a chick who is breaking out of its egg, right? It's a pretty simple fable, like you said, but what's sort of the message behind that that maybe you don't specifically catch up on right away?
Yeah, I would say it's really just like knocking down walls, you know, like breaking through, making change, like even if we're not comfortable with it. And then by using like our own strength to really like come out of that shell, to push through, and how much stronger we become afterwards. And even though we might have that discomfort, like I'm sure it's uncomfortable for that chick that is trying to crack through that shell, but then afterwards, like the celebration of that achievement, you know, and how great it is that we can look back and be like, hey, like there was this barrier, there was this wall, and we were able to knock it down. We were able to push past it. And I think we can all relate that to so many different experiences in our lives, you know? I don't know, just this whole crazy venture I'm on with my first book. I think, you know, kind of knocking down a few walls and pushing through. And there's a lot of uncomfortable moments, but I think I'll have a lot to celebrate after. And maybe we'll celebrate on this call if someone, you know, purchases that next book to push us over.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that you have a Kickstarter going on right now, and the link is in the description of this video if anyone wants to go there. You're $1 away from reaching your goal, and a Kickstarter, for anyone who doesn't know what a Kickstarter is, it's a crowdfunding campaign for her book. So it allows her to raise the funds she needs to have the book printed professionally. It also may cover other expenses that she has, but it gives you also, as a reader, a chance to pre-order the book. So it's not just a donation; it's a way to get a copy of the book or get the book into someone else's hands as well. So just $1 away. It's so close, and yet you've only been going for. Is this the third day?
We're at 48 hours, almost exactly right now. I think it was about 9:15 2 days ago we launched.
Okay, so you're really close to 48 hours. It'd be awesome to meet that goal within 48 hours. And you have 28 days to go, which is amazing. I just you know, for a bilingual book to be so successful within the first couple of days is really cool. So let's talk a little bit about the publishing journey. What was your thinking, or what was the reason behind you deciding to actually publish this book? And instead of just telling it to Zoe, telling it to your daughter, why did you decide to go ahead and push the publish button, so to speak?
I think one of the main motivators was like my cousins. You know, my dad and I were talking about it, and it's like I have a lot of cousins that are only half Persian. They a lot of times don't even speak Persian. And this book kind of, it takes away an obstacle that Persian books have right now. Like if you can't read Persian, you can't access a lot of these Persian books. I mean, I speak Persian, but I can't really read it. So I can't read Persian books to my kid. But now with the way we transliterated, which I learned transliterate is not a common term, so I will describe it. So what we did was by having the Persian in there's so many different terms, but Romanized script almost. So now you can read this because you speak English, and you're being able to pronounce the Persian words for how they should be pronounced. So by taking out that barrier that prevented people from being able to read a Persian book to their kids, now we've just opened that door. So, you know, we spoke about it. And we're like, you know, a lot of my cousins, this would be great for them. They can introduce Persian to their kids. And if it's important for us, I think Carly was saying it in one of your videos, if it means something to me, it probably means something to a lot of other people. And if it could benefit me, it could benefit other people. And ultimately, I think that's like really good to keep in mind, that we're not alone in this, that there are, you know, pretty obvious from my Kickstarter, a lot of it is just family and friends that want to support a creative project, but a lot of it is people who are also interested in passing on the language to their kids. I have a lot of friends whose kids speak Persian, but they can't read it. And so this gives them that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. You know, to find stories like this that might be like you said, really common in one language, but in another language, it's not known at all. And to be able to introduce it to so many people is just amazing. We've got a comment here. This is actually from the previous author that I had on earlier this week. That is so cool. You have done so many different things. You're a jack of all trades. And then they say, this is Carly Valentine, by the way. Was this a one-time passion project book, or do you have plans to write others?
I would love to work on some other projects. There's another story that my dad and I really want to do. We actually have a beautiful recording of my dad's sister, who's kind of like a grandmother type for me. She's a little bit older than my dad. She passed away recently, but we have a recording of her telling this story. And it's a really beautiful kid's story about kind of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm lost for words. Kind of like
me all the time.
I know, right? I'm like, what is that story about? Anyway, so it's a cute story. I got to look into it again. I have to say, it's really hard to find a Persian kid's story that I like the message behind. I don't know if I'm too critical about it, or, you know, my daughter the other day wanted to listen to something about Snow White, and I was like, no, I don't like the message of these like princess stories that you want to listen to. So I think I'm just a little critical on what stories Mama approves, you know?
Right.
Circle of life. Sorry, that's the term I was trying to think of. So it's about the circle of life, you know, and it's this goat that admires the grass, and then the grass admires the rain, and the rain admires the sun, and it just kind of builds, and it's really cute. I look at it and I'm like, this would be fun to illustrate. So I think I didn't mention this to you, but this is kind of my first illustration project. I mean, I like to paint as a kid, and I like to do really pretty plate presentations when I was a yacht chef, but I kind of learned to do watercolors, and I wanted to kind of show you some of my early sketches. You know, I was like, I've kind of come a long way. You know, I just like, you know, have random things that I just kind of sketched out and painted. And this was actually, I looked at this one the other day. I'm like, oh, I kind of like this one. I should maybe frame that or have that up somewhere. And so I think playing around with watercolors was really fun for me. And just so I looked at this story, and I was like, oh, the animals in here, those would be really fun to illustrate. And I can't remember, we didn't speak about this yet, but in the back of the book, I think one of my favorite sections is all the like oviparous animals. And so again, it's another learning opportunity, but it's got the Persian word and the English. And my almost 2-year-old Bodhi, he knows all the animals now because of this page. It's his favorite, and he opens it up and he tries to be like Zoe. So he like, you know, follows suit with her, and he starts like pointing to them, and so it's pretty fun. It's fun to see.
That's really fun. Let's talk a little bit about the fable, and you said you got another one that you're thinking about writing. Why do you think it's so important to sort of modernize these fables? And we talked about this a little bit, but what do you think? What's the importance of that?
I think it's so nice to be able to pass on some of these cultures. It's kind of like food, you know, like recipes of really authentic dishes that our parents have passed on to us from our grandparents. And I think it's the same as that, you know, like just like being able to like connect to our roots, being able to pass on something that like now Zoe can say, oh, my grandma used to read this to my mom, who used to read this to, you know, and I think that's really fun. That's really fun that now she knows the story. And I imagine she'll be reading it to her kids. And now it's not lost, you know, like if we had kept it limited to those who actually can read the, there's so many different terms, but the Perso-Arabic script, the Arabic script, people use that term, it would eliminate so many of us from really being able to read the story, pass on the story. And it's, so a quick little side note, a friend of mine recently saw the book. I was asking her for some feedback, and she said to me, she's like, is this one of the stories or one of the songs you sang to Zoe when we were all hanging out at the zoo the other day or something like that? And this is like years ago. And I was like, I couldn't believe that she remembered Like she recognized by reading the story that it was, maybe I don't read a lot of Persian stories to my kid or Persian songs, but I remember we were waiting in line and I was trying to distract the kids and I was singing this, and her kids are American born and raised. They don't speak Persian, but I was singing it. And I thought that was really cool that she recognized the tune or the song.
Yeah, absolutely. So these stories, they may actually get lost, and I'm wondering, you know, is this script being used by less and less people in the world, or is it mainly just those who sort of immigrate to other countries and stop learning how to read the script? Is that how it's getting lost, or what do you think?
I think so, but I also think so. Something very interesting. I have a cousin that lives in Iran, and their daughters both go to an Italian school, and they learn Italian. Their parents speak to them only in English, even though they are Persian born and raised. And the kids don't read the Arabic, Perso-Arabic script. So even this is an example of someone that lives in Iran, and as their parents are like, you know what, Persian's not that important to like read and write in, and maybe Italian and Spanish and French and English are a little more universally accepted and would benefit my kids more, you know, job opportunities. We all think about like our kids' futures. And so I think in a way we are probably it's slowly going to dissolve, you know, and if people here aren't really using it, and you know, I was born in Iran, so you'd think that, you know, my parents sent me to Persian school for a few days. I hated it. I came home crying, I think. I have this funny memory. I had a Persian teacher tell me, she's like, your name is Tanya, 3 syllables, Tanya, and I'm trying to be Canadianized. I don't want my name to be Tanya. I want it to be Tanya or Tanya, you know, and so that really, I don't know why it's stuck in my memory this whole time. And so I resisted. And my dad very briefly taught us an older script because he thought it was easier to learn. And it's actually in the back of our book. It's the, I think it's the Pahlavi or the Avestan. It was one of these like ancient scripts. And I mean, it's kind of nice that it's like our roots and our heritage, but no one uses it. So, you know, we didn't practice it. And so, so I think that it's really nice so we can have access to these stories without having that that language, the script to stop us.
I was thinking about this actually earlier today, and you know, I live here in Norway. I'm American. My wife is Norwegian, but I was wondering, you know, Norwegian is a very small language. Very few people know the language. It's a small country. Everyone has probably heard of Hans Christian Andersen. He is Norwegian, and many of the fables that we love in America are his. And so they have been sort of translated to English and modernized and all of that. But I'm wondering also, there could be hundreds other stories possibly that I haven't even heard of living here, that could get lost. And I'm thinking of like the old Viking times and the Norse, I don't even know what it's called, the old Norse language that they used. And I just wonder how many stories from that time are getting lost because no one knows the stories anymore. Be interesting to find out. So Golden Chick right now is available on Kickstarter at the link in the description. Like I said, actually, I just saw some numbers move here. By the way, Tanya, you are now over your goal. So it happened live on the show here. You've reached your goal. So since that just happened, tell us what's next, because I know you've got some stretch goals. Explain what that is on Kickstarter and what your goals are.
Yeah, for sure. So stretch goals allow us to, I guess, keep the momentum of the project going and add, you know, I was really hesitant with what amount to add. I'm like, well, maybe I just print, you know, like a smaller number of books. So then I made my goal a little lower, and I didn't want to seem like greedy or anything like that. So stretch goals really just allow us to add extra goals to it to aim towards. And so I've added a few stretch goals for embellishments to the cover. You know, I'd like to do the spot UV and maybe a dust cover. And I initially, so we never spoke about this, but I initially had donations on, so once I reached certain goals, I was going to donate a certain number of books. When I submitted my Kickstarter, they actually rejected my Kickstarter and said that this goes against their rules. And when they gave me the little description of what the rules were, it was about donating money. And I was like, I'm not donating money, I'm donating books. So to avoid any confusion, I didn't want to slow down the launch because now I've committed to a day and I want to like stick to that. I deleted that line and I'm like, I'll deal with it afterwards. So my to-do list today, one of the things is to reach out to Kickstarter and be like, hey, I know this is part of the rules. I don't want to do what you told me not to do, but is it okay if I add this? So I'd like to add some stretch goals of, you know, the next $1,000 I reach, I'll donate 10 books or 20 books to local organizations or elementary schools that need books. I've reached out to a few people to ask, you know, who does anyone know of any organizations that take books? Because not everyone wants a book. And so that's, I'll definitely be working on the stretch goals now. So that's pretty exciting too.
Yeah. And you can, if they'll let you, and they should, because I've seen other Kickstarters that have done it with no problem, but if they'll let you add it as even an add-on, you can add on a copy of the book as a donation, and even maybe add its own, what do you call it? The category, the reward. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be awesome if they would let you do that. Of course, you don't want them to like totally cancel your whole thing, but
exactly. So I have a contact at Kickstarter. I have her email address, and I'm like, I'm going to email her and ask her and make sure like I'm following the rules and I'm not offending anyone. Because, like you said, I mean, I've purchased, you know, over a dozen books on Kickstarter, and I think all of them had a donation tier. All of them had donate a book, and so I'll definitely.
Yeah, I just did it yesterday for another author. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, find the link down in the description for the Kickstarter and go support Tanya and her book. We have more questions. This is not the end, but I want to jump into a little bit of a lightning round with you. These are questions that you're not familiar with. I did not give you these, but just to have a little fun. This is called the Coffee and Kidlit Show, and I have to admit I'm drinking water today because I didn't have time to make another cup of coffee. It's 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon for me. So an afternoon coffee is due after this show. But you've been all around the world. You've worked on cruise boats, and you're an international, so you've been all around. Tell me where you've had your best coffee.
You know, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit because I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do remember.
Oh, you're not a coffee drinker.
I know. Am I like not allowed to be on this show right now?
Sorry, guys. We got to close this off. No, go
We're
ahead.
done. I do remember. Okay, so this is pretty funny. I think it was when we first got to Bali. So my husband and I, what we would end up doing is we would just work nonstop on a boat, and then we would burn out. So then we're like, all right, we're done. Sorry, we got to quit. We'd go travel for a little bit. I know, crazy lifestyle. And so at one point we went to Southeast Asia for a few months. I think we were there for maybe 4 or 5 months actually. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, we got to Bali and we went on this crazy little tour that took us to this coffee plantation. And one of the coffees that we tried, which is actually really tasty, I wish I had this correct, I should have looked this up before we spoke, was coffee that a certain animal chews. And then and it was really tasty. I'm not a coffee drinker, and I really enjoyed the flavor of this coffee.
So you tried it. Yeah, you're the first one that I have met that has actually tried, and I can't think of the name of it either. But,
me neither. And I have a really great picture of our little coffee samples. I think it's actually maybe on my Instagram. I'll look it up and I'll send it to you if I have it. And it was all the different coffees that we tried. And my husband's a coffee connoisseur. He likes his coffee. And so he also really liked it. It had a little, I want to say, like sweetness to it. It wasn't as bitter as other coffees. Yeah. So,
well, I think it's okay that you don't really drink a lot of coffee. I'm sort of a coffee rookie, you might say. I started out with the really sweet stuff like the frappuccinos, and then slowly got into lattes on the weekends, and then it wasn't really until we moved to Norway, the day we moved here, I started drinking coffee every day because I knew I wouldn't be able to go out and buy it and spend, extraordinary amount of dollars or kroner on coffee here in Norway. So I'm an everyday drinker now. 15 years ago, I probably never even tasted coffee. So that's okay.
Right?
Maybe you'll get there one day.
Maybe. I did have a bit of coffee yesterday. I had this crazy migraine come on. I think I will say I've had too much screen time. And I said to my daughter, I'm like, this is why we talk about screen time, because we're kind of a low screen time family. And I was like, I've been on my phone and computer nonstop for the past couple of days. I'm a little bit of a last minute person, so I was still tweaking my Kickstarter and changing the graphics and things like that up until like seconds before I launched. And I think that migraine came on because of the screen time. And so I had a little coffee yesterday. And so it's good to reserve it for those times when, I don't know, I think it helped. I took a jump in the lake as well. And I think that cold water and the coffee and probably a combo of the two.
There you go. So next question, what was your favorite children's book as a kid?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or one of your favorite, if you had.
Yeah, so it's funny. I still have a copy of my the Paperbag Princess. And I have a picture of me doing the illustrations of the Paperbag Princess. Like I'm sitting there at our dining table and I have the book open and I'm, copying the same illustrations from the book or being inspired by it. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that was probably one of my favorites. It's definitely, I mean, I have photos of, of it, and now I've saved it for my daughter and reread it to her. So it's definitely one that sticks out.
Okay, that's one I haven't heard of, but I haven't read too many princess books as a kid. So
right, it's a good princess book too. It's a okay. She doesn't give in to that, like, oh, the Prince Charming wants to sweep her away, and he's a little high maintenance, and there's a dragon in there, and she her clothes burned down, and she's left with nothing, but she still has all this strong character, and he's just like crummy. So it's a good woman power kind of book.
Right. So you did say that you don't really read to Zoe so much anymore because she's reading on her own and reading chapter books and all that. So what was the last book you read to Zoe?
Yeah, so last night actually.
Or what was your other child's name again?
Bodhi.
Bodhi, yeah.
Yeah, and he's not as much of a reader as she is. He definitely he is a typical boy. He loves his cars and balls, and if you give him those two things, he's happy. But he actually loves The Serious Goose. Have you read that one?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh. It is, I think it's like, it's a comedian who wrote it, like Jimmy Kimmel maybe or someone. And he is obsessed with this book. And that is one of the reasons actually I decided to go with hardcover, because I was contemplating between board book and hardcover. And I was like, oh, but hardcovers stay longer. Even when our kids outgrow the board books, we keep them around. So, but to answer your initial question, we read The Color Monster last night, because we had lots of strong emotions in this house yesterday, probably because mom has been busy and not spending as much time with the kiddos. And Zoe and Bodhi typically get along really, really well. She is, I don't know, it's surprising how well they get along. But yesterday she was not having it. She was like, she was like trying to run away from him. She was like, this is my space. And he's her little brother. He just wants to like tag along with anything she does. So
that sounds familiar.
We read The Color Monster, and timing was good, and it's a short one, but we spoke about our emotions a little bit. And I think books that allow us to speak about something afterwards are just so great, the takeaway we can get from them.
That's good. So we're going to get into some more questions. I do have a couple more questions from our readers, and this is Carly again. What did you feel your biggest obstacle in writing and illustrating this book was, and what parts of the process came the most natural to you? What parts were more of a struggle?
Oh, that's such a good question. I thought the illustrations were going to be the hard part, but I think that was probably the easiest. That was definitely the most enjoyable, which made me think, I want to just like focus on the illustrations and maybe less on the technical formatting, marketing side of things. So the illustrations were definitely the most enjoyable. The struggle was, I guess for me, the biggest struggle, and I guess a lot of parents can probably relate to this, is timing and like balancing like life at home with the kids and stuff for yourself.
That can be a challenge.
Yeah, you know, when I first started illustrating, I mean, I just had Zoe, and it was still, I was only illustrating at night once she was in bed, and the house was quiet, and I had my little scene set up on the dining table, and I would illustrate, do my watercolors. And then now, you know, it's so chaotic, it's so busy, and both my kids are really active, so I'm with them all day long, I feel like. So trying to carve that time in the evening. So I'd like, it would go into my sleep. So I'm like, okay, well, if I can sleep like 2 hours less tonight, I can like work on my Kickstarter. And I was thinking, well, you know, about how much effort Kickstarters go. I thought I could do my Kickstarter over a weekend. I'm like, I could just record this video really quick. And I feel like it took me 2 days.
You could have, you met your goal in 48 hours. You could have.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely a myth that a lot of people believe, that they can just do it in a few days and be done with it. It's not typically the case.
Right. And if you're constantly seeking for perfection, which unfortunately I suffer from that, and I still haven't learned that perfect does not exist. You know, we're not going to find that perfection. And why do I keep trying to reach it? I don't know. One day I'll learn, you know? And so I was sitting there and I would be like tweaking some of the graphics. So, you know, like I think my subtitles like slide in with the little oviparous animals. And then I'm like, oh, should this be higher? Should this be lower? Should this be here? And I'm indecisive as well. So when you're looking for perfection, but you're indecisive, not a good combo.
Yeah.
So that definitely, the Kickstarter definitely took me way longer than I imagined, and really just balancing. And I think yesterday, Zoe's little, her reaction to Bodhi and some of their struggles reminded me that, you know what, like family's important, family comes first, and maybe I need to be on my phone a little bit less. Maybe like, you know, maybe I post a little less on social media, and that's okay. But you know, you kind of see other people's Kickstarters and other people's posts and other people's, that comparison, you know, we're constantly like comparing ourselves to someone else, and we think that we need to do that as well. And a reminder that we don't.
Yeah. That's definitely a danger when it comes to social media, is comparison. Especially you and I are in the same author groups, and there's other authors that are just killing it, and it seems like all they do is author stuff, and it's easy to kind of get in that trap of thinking that we need to constantly be doing something to push or promote our books.
Right.
We talked about donating books, and Carly just mentioned the Ronald McDonald House, so you may consider that as a place.
Thank you. I will make a note of that. I've heard of that.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about your whole family kind of being involved with this book. So tell us a little bit more about that. Of course, you are the author and illustrator, but you had some other family members involved as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say my dad was kind of the main reason we started this project. You know, it was his suggestion. And at first, it was just going to be something small. We just kind of print out for, you know, Zoe and maybe my cousins. And he did all of the initial translations. And the transliterations. My dad's translated a ton of books as well in the past, and he's published his poetry books. And so it's not totally new to him. He has been in the industry for a while. And then after the first initial translation that I kind of played around with the wording, I had my brother look at it, and my brother's a musician, and he played around with the words a little bit, and kind of one of the greatest suggestions was him suggesting to keep the name Rostam in there instead of Hercules. And he changed a couple things as well. And yeah, I guess, and just really feedback from friends and family and passing the book around, and some of my cousins, you know, one of the things have changed so much from when I started. So I printed this one just like on Shutterfly or something, just to see what my book would look like as a hardcover. And so we initially wrote Joojé Talâee this way. And then because I was against having accents in the book. I was like, you know, as a parent, I just want to pick up a book and just to read it to my child and not worry, is it pronounced ah or eh or e or, you know, and my dad's like, yeah, but people are going to mispronounce it, you know, and he really fought me on it at first. And then, you know, I won. And I know, right? And then handing it around and having people read it. And I understood, wow, people are really mispronouncing this. So then we switched it to adding just the accent on the E and the accent on the A. And a quick little legend in the back that says how it's pronounced. And that allowed, I think it's come so far now. When people pick up this book, they are actually pronouncing it properly, which is really nice. Because, I mean, it's okay that they're not pronouncing it properly when it was the other way, but it's kind of nicer to pronounce it right. But yeah, so we really played around with the transliterations and the translation. And then I was introduced to Robin Katz through one of your interviews. And so I reached out to her because she is like so great at metered rhymes. So she gave me some feedback as well. And we made a few more tweaks that just really helped the flow and really took it up. I think the English is now comparable to the Persian. Like at first, the Persian was way more fun to read. Now I think the English is just as fun to read.
That's good. You also mentioned your grandmother. You had really hoped to have this book out for her. And she sadly passed away, I believe, right? So
yeah, exactly. She was a good motivator to get this going, and I really wanted to have a recording. I knew she was living in Iran at the time, and I knew she wouldn't meet Zoe yet, but I really wanted a recording of her reading the story to Zoe. And unfortunately, we lost the ball. We dropped the ball on that. But she was. I remember her reading this story to me, and she did unfortunately pass. But I'm sure she's looking down on me and proud of the book I have now.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the illustration process, if we can. First of all, it's let me go back to the PDF here. Just some really nice effects with the watercolor in the book. You got some really bright colors, and this whole mosaic sort of theme to the book is really unique. So talk to us about illustrating the book. And you said you thought that would be the hardest part. Turned out you really loved it. So what was that like?
Yeah, so this pattern came from a Persian architectural book that my father had. And I was, so, you know, as a first-time illustrator or someone who's just learning to illustrate, I had a really hard time with, I loved the eyes of the bird once I started illustrating that, but I couldn't figure out the body. I was really struggling with like what the body should look like. And so one of the ways that I got around that was the bird is kind of, his face is kind of sticking out of things, right? So his face is sticking out of the bricks. And so that was kind of like a way around it. And so I was talking to my dad about it and trying to brainstorm some ideas for the breaking down walls and what the shell would look like and things. And so he gave me this architectural book that he had of like, I don't know, ancient Persian architecture. And so that's where the inspiration for that brick wall came from. And then there's little things, you know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Persian or I guess Middle Eastern lucky charm, the evil eye, you know, so, you know, there's a few like little evil eyes in there. And I think I tried to have it on every page. So you have another one and, you know, so they're fun to spot.
I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, you know, certain things that you throw in and you're like, do you just allow the reader to find them or do you bring it up? So maybe I'll do like a little, I don't know, it'll be a motivator to do a live on social media and point out all the different, maybe we'll do a contest and see like how many lucky charm, you know, I don't like the term evil eye because I feel like it has a negative connotation. Meanwhile, it's like a positive thing to have that lucky charm. So I'm just gonna call it a lucky charm, but so to have that lucky charm, like how many of them do you find in the book, you know, and then this one, like, right behind there. And yeah, so little things like that were kind of fun to add. And definitely, I think the cover of this chat, you have the image of the bird. And I don't know if that's from when I transformed the bird into Zoe, or not in my Kickstarter video, but Zoe was my inspiration for the eyes of the bird. You know, she's got striking big blue eyes. And when I was sitting here sketching out the bird, it really, I don't know, she was my life, right? Like she was everything. And so she was definitely, and so when I was making this Kickstarter video, I'm like, I should see if I can, I was like learning how to do Final Cut Pro. Yeah. Is that what it's called? Figuring out how to like do these little edits. And so I put her picture and then put the picture of the bird and mesh them into each other. And that was kind of a fun little part of my video, I think.
Yeah, that's a really unique characteristic of your illustrations, as well as sort of oversized eyes. And I just love that you were able to bring in so many different aspects of the Persian culture into your book that many people won't recognize, but it still makes it unique and a part of who you are, which is, it's just really awesome. You mentioned that you needed to sort of find this creative outlet, so you began doing watercolors at night after the kids were asleep. So I have to ask, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you start painting because you wanted to do this book, or were you already painting and then suddenly, you know, you wanted to, which came first?
Yeah, the book definitely came first, you know?
Okay.
At one point my dad's like, you know, and so the funny thing is my dad's a pretty good illustrator too. He's really good at doing like caricature type sketches. One of my uncles points out that, like, you know, as a kid, he remembers my dad always doing these little cartoon sketches, and, you know, he sits with my kids and does illustrations with them. So my dad's a pretty good illustrator himself, but he was like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to get an illustrator? And I was like, I'm too controlling to let somebody else take over part of this book. You know? I'm like, I will learn to do watercolors and we will do this ourselves. So that's kind of how that came. And it was, you know, I guess maybe deep down I knew I needed something for myself and I needed that creative outlet. And so then I started picking away at it, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to or not, but I was like, it's worth a try.
There you go. So let's go back to the bilingual aspect of the book a little bit. I think I already asked that. What? Oh, no. Okay. Why are bilingual children's books so important, do you think? We talked about why it's important to introduce these fables from different cultures that may not be available, but why do you think bilingual books are important?
I think that in general, exposing our kids to other cultures and languages is so vital to them, being more open-minded, you know, and like, I think now more than ever, you know, just like knowing that there's different cultures, knowing there's different languages, knowing that there's people with different backgrounds. And so interesting, on one of our Facebook author illustrator groups, someone had posted recently, they were looking for books of from people of color or diversity, something along those lines. And I posted in that a chat thread. I'm like, well, my book is not about like people of color, but, you know, it includes diversity, multiculturalism. And I said, it's a Persian rhyme. And so someone commented and she said, oh, is that like a Persian cat? What is a Persian rhyme? She's like, I have a Persian cat. And I thought, oh my gosh, this person doesn't know what Persian is. That was my first thought, right? And then I was like, this is why a book like this is so nice. This is why it's good for us. Like, I need to step back and realize not everyone knows what Persian is, and that's okay. But what a great reason to be able to like expose different kids to that. And so our kids aren't narrow-minded, and that they do have this open idea and maybe like compassion towards others. And I just think it's really nice. It's funny. A couple of my favorite kids books that we have in our house from when Zoe was little are in Italian, and I don't speak Italian. I don't even think I can pronounce it properly, but it's so fun to pronounce. Like, I put on this like funny Italian accent, and one of them is like, it's this like crazy little farm animal thing. And whenever I would read this to her, I never knew if I was pronouncing it correctly. I'm like, pio, pio, sono giallo. And I'm sure I'm butchering the language, right? But so I thought that, I'm like, you know, I would love to have access to other languages, but know how to pronounce it. And so I think the way we've transliterated our book is really gonna, I'd like to pronounce it in proper Italian. I don't want to like just make it up and pretend. But I think that just, I think I kind of got a little off topic there, but I just think bilingual books are great. And I think, so it's funny, I was talking to my dad yesterday. I was like, oh, I have this interview coming up. What am I going to talk about? You know, why is bilingualism important for kids? We know, you know, an extra language is great for cognitive development, blah, blah, blah. And he gave me this interesting analogy, which I liked. So I'm going to share with you. He says, a bilingual person almost has the extra strength. It's almost like they have two ropes that they're, you know, let's say hanging off a cliff from. And that extra rope gives them that like extra strength. And I'm sure his wording was a lot more eloquent than mine, but I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. I like that extra little, you know, I think it's kind of fun when we do practice other languages and other cultures. And I remember when I was living in Costa Rica, I learned that when you're at a restaurant and you order food, you say regálame. And you don't use that in other Spanish speaking countries because it means gift me. But in Costa Rican Spanish, it's like you sound like a local. You're like, regálame, you know, whatever dish you're ordering. And so I think like learning those little things about different languages and different cultures. And I'm hoping we start traveling again more with the kids and exposing them to different parts of the world. I think it's also part of that, like why bilingual books are good and why it's good to travel and why it's good to expose our kids to different things around the world. I think that's really great.
Absolutely. I think that's beautiful. And what I really like is that you, not only did you bring this bilingual book to life, but you, in the back of the book, you have sort of these lessons in how to pronounce or how to follow the phonetics of the book. And I think that's great because here you are trying to kind of stutter your way through an Italian book. You don't have that in the back of the book to teach you how to say it, but yet your book does. And yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I wish you all the best with your Kickstarter. And I'm just going to jump over to your Kickstarter now, because like you said, like I said, we've reached your goal for the Kickstarter, and now you've got stretch goals ahead, and that's really awesome. But I just want to play your video if we could. Awesome. Just for anyone who's watching the video, they can see sort of the book trailer, if you will. Zoe is so cute. It's so fun to watch her on your trailer there. So for anyone who
see
sees
her doing
this,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say you should see her doing the marketing when we're at the playground or we are anywhere out. If she hears someone speaking Persian, she's like, "Mama, give me a business card," and she runs over and she has this little. She gives this business card. She gives them a little spiel. She's like, "This is my mama's new book. It's a Persian book called Joojé Talâee. It comes out," and she's got the date. She is honestly, I think this book's doing so well because of all the marketing she's done.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I love that. What we talked about today is that bilingual books are not just for those who are part of the culture. A Spanish English book is not just for those who speak Spanish. A Persian English book is not just for those who have a Persian background. It's for anyone to sort of introduce a different culture. It's not just the language, but it's the artwork that's in the book and all these things, amazing things. So if you're watching this, I encourage anyone to go to Kickstarter at the link in the description and support Golden Chick on Kickstarter. It's already reached its goal, so let's make it an even better book and include those spot UV and dust jacket and all that. Tanya, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been really fun to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Travis. This was really nice. And thanks for helping me get my first interview out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you will join me next week as I talk to Stacy Bauer. She's the author of a whole series of books called Young Change Makers. She is just finishing up book number 7. And actually, I'm just finishing it up because I'm her book designer. But she is also running a Kickstarter right now, and she's trying to get the last couple of books out into the world. And so I'll be talking to Stacy about this new series, fantastic series about real kids who are doing amazing things. So I hope you'll tune in next week, next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for the Coffee and Kidlit Show. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next week.